Lee, I want to start with your story because you didn't start at Disneyland or Walt Disney World. I had the pleasure of doing a Pioneer and Legends panel earlier this morning. You actually started in Oklahoma.
I did.
And you actually started your career in the hotel business that actually had nothing to do with Disney. So just real quick, tell us that story and what actually brought you to Disney, because I think that's a fascinating tale.
You might find the beginning a little depressing, but I'll start out. I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. It was in Copan, Oklahoma. We were the poorest child we could be. We didn't even have indoor plumbing. My brother and I didn't know that was a problem. We thought that's just the way it was. Kids are never, we got dinner every night, so we were happy. And my mother was pretty busy. She was married 5 times. And stop that. I'm totally normal. And I got adopted twice. I got my name Cockerell when I was third name when I was 16 by husband number 4. And he had money because my mother started making better choices. And she started marrying doctors. And they were good guys. So I got to go to college because he had money. I went to Oklahoma State for 2 years, but I forgot to go to class. So I flunked out in 1964, went in the Army. And when I got out of the Army, I met another fellow there from the UK, and he said, I'm going to Washington, D.C. You want to go with me? I'm going to go to open the Washington Hilton. That was a brand new hotel. That's the hotel where John Hinckley shot President Reagan back in the 80s. And I'd never been out of Oklahoma my whole life. And I said, yeah, okay. Well, we went to Washington. We got a room at the Marriott. It was $8 a night. And we drive-in, check-in. They were ahead of the time. That was the new technology. And I got a job as a waiter, at the banquet waiter. And somebody took me by the hand, taught me the business. I'd never been in a hotel before. I didn't know anything. But you talk about somebody helping you. He did. And then eventually I got into a management training program. And I tell people there's 2 reasons I got in that program. One, I had a good attitude. You didn't have a college degree, you probably want to have a good attitude. That might be your help, because people want to help you. And I'm very organized. And I met my wife. She was in we've been married 53 years. She was in the office next to mine. She came into my office to sharpen her pencils, because we had the pencil sharpener screwed to the file cabinet. She had a French boyfriend when I met her. It took about 1 year to get rid of him. And then I moved all over. Chicago, Waldorf Astoria, New York, Los Angeles. Then I joined Marriott, where I was with Hilton 8 years, Marriott 17 years. I became the vice president of food and beverage operations there for worldwide for them, because I'd focused on learning all about food. I've been in accounting, I've been a cook, I've been a waiter, and so I really knew the business. Then I went to Marriott. Was great company, great people, and I got recruited by Disney in 1990 to go to France. My wife thought that was a good idea, because she already liked French things. And, she had told me when I met her, we're going to live in France. She said she wouldn't go out with me because I had a bad attitude. And I said, I just want to take you to lunch. She said, yeah, right. And so she said she was going to live in France, and her kids were going to speak French and English. And that happened, but it was with me, not with this other guy. And then I went to France, worked 3 years, opened Disneyland Paris. I got brought back to Orlando. I'd never worked in Orlando before. I was the senior vice president of the hotels here. And then 2 years later, I was promoted to executive vice president of operations for all the operations here. Did that for 10 years. And I left. And by the way, Daniel got all of his promotions after I left. So he was so happy when I retired to get out of his way. But that's my story, and now I have a consulting business. I write books. I've written 4 books. I have a podcast. I have a Cockerell Academy. It's an online learning system. Daniel and I are doing courses for universities now, because a lot of the stuff we know, the kids need to learn. And so we're having fun with that. That's my story.
Woo!
And so somewhere along the way, this guy comes along And I know, Dan, you got started, I believe, as a parking lot attendant at Euro Disney at the time, correct?
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny, we came in here today, and my very, very first job was on the college program and at the Contemporary. And I think they're having their 4th rehab since I worked here on the college program. And a friend of mine the other day, they're doing some work here, he sent me a picture of the safety deposit boxes down at the front desk. And I know people may say, what's a safety deposit box? Isn't that in a bank? Well, we used to have them here, so they didn't have safes in the room. So people bring their jewelry, and we'd have a key, and they'd have a key, and you turn the keys, and they put their things in there, and they're all rusted out now, and they're on their way out. But it was here, and our son, when he was in kindercare, he's 26 now, he was in kindercare, he did his Christmas show here in this room. And I remembered it because my wife and I both forgot about the Christmas show, and like all the kids had red shirts, he had like a blue shirt, and we were the worst parents ever. I still haven't gotten over it. I come to this room, I feel guilty about it. But yeah, then I went back to school for 2 years, and my plan was, I was playing rugby in college, and I called my parents, I said, well, I think I'm going to take the year to go to New Zealand and play rugby and work a little bit and figure out what I'm going to do. And usually what my parents will say, you know what, that sounds like a great idea, but here's something else you could do. You can go work for Disney. And this was 1990, I got out of BU, and they were opening in 92. So I came down here, my first job, I got to casting, and they said, what do you want to do? I said, I have a political science degree. Give me the job I'm qualified for. They said, you should park cars at Epcot. That's what I did. I parked cars at Epcot and drove the trams and trained there for 6 months. And while I was doing my laundry at Vista Way, on my third week there, Vista Way, yes, all right. On my 3rd week there, I was down doing the laundry, and there was this girl, and we didn't have a pencil sharpener, but we had a washing machine. And I kind of started talking to her, and we've been married 28 years now. So that washing machine, I'm glad I was taught how to do my laundry. Right there. She wasn't being pointed out like that. So I parked cars and then left on January 1st, 1992 and flew to France. That was about 3 months before the park opened. As I told people, what do you think I did? International parking. I did domestic parking, and I wanted to get my portfolio rounded out.
With that political science degree.
Yes, international. And it turns out in France, you need twice as many people to park cars. They move really fast and they don't follow directions. And so we opened the park there in April '92, and Valor and I stayed there for 5 years. She's from Lyon in the south of France, and my visa was going to expire. So I said, well, I have an idea. We're doing the dishes one morning. I have an idea. If we get married, I can stay. She said, all right, that sounds good. So it was more of an agreement than it was sort of a proposal. And we, sure enough, we got married 6 weeks later over there. I got my visa. We stayed, my parents moved back to Walt Disney World. We stayed for 3 more years over there. And then we moved back here in '97. And I spent the next 23 years working at Disney up until May of 2018.
And I always find it interesting. First of all, Dan tells these wonderful parking car stories at Euro Disney. And he forgets, when the park first opened, nobody came. So how hard was it to park all these cars? Right?
Don't remind us.
I know. But then secondly...
Some came, but yeah, definitely not enough.
Exactly. But then secondly, I find it interesting because you rose up through the ranks, after Dad left, of course, you rose up through the ranks and you were Vice President of Magic Kingdom, Vice President of Epcot, Vice President of Hollywood Studios. What is your issue with animals? Like, you just didn't want to do Animal Kingdom.
It just wasn't in the cards, I guess. But,
Okay, so it's not an animal thing.
It is. They only got a dog about 7 years ago, so.
It took me the years to get there. Yeah, I couldn't get that 4th park. It just didn't work.
Gotcha. So, and you have a relatively new book out, How's the Culture in Your Kingdom?
Yes.
Talk to us about what that is all about. Because I do believe culture is critical, and that's a really important message, and obviously something that you learned in your years and experience here at Disney.
Yeah, it's a great question because Val and I talked. We talked about it for about a year. We had conversations, and she was big. Let's go do something else. And I said, "Are you crazy? You don't leave Disney. You either die there or you retire. But you don't leave. We talked. And I put my foot down. I said, absolutely not. So a year later, I was like, okay, we're going to do this, because she always gets her way. So we ended up leaving, and I had a great mentor. You know, Lee had left in 2006, so he'd been doing this for 12 years. And so I had, I found that leaving a big corporate organization like this and become an entrepreneur, it's terrifying. Because and the first thing I said was, you know what? I don't know anything. I don't know anything that anyone wants to know about. I know they're interested in Disney, but I don't even know what to tell. If a company says, come and talk to us, I'll say, I don't even know what to talk to them about. And so one night I started writing down, well, I guess I do know something. And I wrote down communication. Yep, I know how to communicate. I wrote a little thing about that. Problem solving. Yeah, I know how to do that. And I just, one at a time, I came up with these topics. And I came up with like 25 different topics. And it was a big mess. And I sent it off to a friend of mine at Rollins College. He was one of the professors there. And I said, can you look at this? I said, I got something here, but I don't even know what it is. I don't know how to organize it. And literally the next morning, he sent it back to me. He said, Dan, there are 3 themes in this. You wrote about leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization, and I put them in order for you. I was like, thank you. And so we started writing the book, and Valerie and I got to a point where I was just getting burnt out, and she started taking over. So when Margot, our daughter, reads it, she goes, I know which chapters you wrote, and I know which chapters my mom wrote. So she knows how we write. And we just went through that. We added another section on leading change. So the whole first section is about leading self. I grew up being an athlete, and it just is so logical. You should take care of yourself first, above everything else. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your family. It's hard to have a great attitude. It's hard to be patient. It's hard to deal with all the stresses of life if you don't feel good about yourself. And feel good about yourself are simple things. The right diet, exercise, getting enough sleep, dealing with pressure and stress, being organized, just having a good, just feeling right. And so that's the whole first section of the book, and that kicks it off. I said, this is the starting point. Then I get into leading team, leading organization, and the last section is leading change. We added that after because that's an important piece to talk about. And the publisher told us, look, you're not the first person to write a book about leadership and management, so it better be good stories in there. And so we put lots of stories to really illustrate the examples. And I'd get Val would call me, hey, I need a story about collaboration. I'm like, I got nothing. She said, look, you came home for 26 years. Every night you had like 6 stories. You can't think of one. And so I just thought, I kept thinking about it. We finally got a lot of them out there. And I would highly recommend, whether you're going to write a book or not, I wish I had a journal. I wish I had done a journal all those years. And just put these reminders, because every once in a while a story that I remember comes up. Like, I can't believe we forgot that story. So that's kind of how it came to life. And I took a lot of samples from Lee's book is in our voice. We kind of just tell stories about how to do things. And it's not necessarily the only way to do things, but it's the Disney way, and that's how we learn. And that's what we learned over our careers, is how to do things a certain way, and that's people seem to really value that.
Yeah. And I think what Dan is saying is the key word here is story. Walt, for all of his successes, most wanted to be remembered as a storyteller. And at the end of the day, that's why he built Disneyland, for the purpose of telling stories. And stories where we're not a passive participant, but an active, not a passive spectator, but an active participant. And at the start of his book, Dan is telling us, be an active participant in your own life, in your own story. Lead in your own life and in your own great story. Lee, you tell a great story where at the early part of your career, you had to be challenged about your own attitude. You had to really have a gut check around the fact that people didn't necessarily like working with you. Talk to us about that and what you learned from that experience.
What I learned, and looking back, I know why. I mean, I got into the workplace, and I'm working for a hotel. The next thing I get into bigger jobs, and so I don't have a college degree. I grew up in this dysfunctional family, so I'm a pretty insecure guy. I mean, really insecure. And And so I was a tough taskmaster. When I got to be a manager, now I can work them over. And I just learned that I got things done. I got promoted over and over and over again because I get it done, and I didn't care how many bodies I left behind, and you better do it, and blah, blah, blah. And then I had an exchange with one of my managers. I went out to see him in El Paso, the food and beverage director. I'd never been there, never met him. When I got there, he'd been transported to the hospital for observation because he apparently turned out that me coming, he was so stressed out that he was getting dizzy. He came back that night and we had dinner, and he told me that. And that was when I really woke up. I thought my mother and grandmother would kill me if they knew I was treating people that way. And it was purely out of lack of self-confidence. If you're tough enough, people don't get near you, and you can get things done. And I can guarantee you, anybody who tries to intimidate you, raise their voice to you, do anything to make you feel uncomfortable, that's an insecure person. That's it. And so I had to go to work on that. It took me a long time to work out of it. I started going to seminars, leadership seminars, reading more about leaders. How do you get it done? How do you build the rapport and the relationship? And it was hard, and I finally broke through it. And I can even tell you, it would affect my marriage. When you're insecure and you have arguments because you want to win. And today, my wife told me not long ago, she said, "Lee, you don't aggravate me anymore. Why?" Don't say that, you haven't heard that. I said, because I just learned to let it go, Priscilla.
We're not singing that song now.
I learned to let it go.
Let it go.
Because having a big fight over some little nothing is not worth it. That's basically what I learned. There's no upside to aggravating people. Zero. None. There is none. It's only a downside. And I had to work my way through that and I got more secure and more confident as I had successes in my life. I started to figure out, I would tell you one thing, don't ever worry about how much you know, because nobody knows what they're doing. So you're in good company. You just go, you do the best you can every day, you wake up, you try to get better, you try to learn, take a course, read a book, watch people, and slowly but surely, literally, when I was 20, I knew nothing. I went in the Army and I'd never heard of Vietnam. This was 1964. I should have known about that, because but I didn't know anything. We didn't watch the news, we didn't read, we had very little interest in current events in life. So that's how it played out. And I got over that insecurity because my wife hasn't left me yet, so I'm doing pretty good.
And what has it been like for you as a father to watch him rise through the ranks and achieve the level of success following almost in your footsteps?
Yeah, it's been amazing because I never met my father, so I don't know who he was. And Priscilla and I grew up in Oklahoma, which was kind of sometimes bigoted in the 40s and 50s, and a little racist. And Priscilla and I had a talk before he was born and said, we're going to make sure Daniel never hears in our house what I heard in my house about other people. Those people, and those people, and those people. And he doesn't have a discriminatory bone in his body. And his kids, they're even better. And it's a matter of breaking, whether it's abuse, alcohol, bigotry, racism. And so that's the legacy we're going to leave is that we stopped it. And the marriage. I had to get the family average down. My mother got me pretty high. And my brother's been married 4 times, and I've been married once, and he's been married once. So we got it down to about 1.9 now. So that's just how we thought about it. We're going to work through these tough times, and because there's frankly, if you got a problem, you got a problem. My wife was never the problem. Turned out when I quit criticizing her, she got better. Incredible. I used to want her closet to look like mine. Mine's like perfect. Hers has a sign on it that says, "Do not enter." I told her once, if anybody breaks in the house, we'll hide in your closet. They'll never find us. She didn't think it's fun. So it's just a matter of what do you want to be remembered for, and that'll help you with your behavior. what do you want to be remembered for? And I think about that a lot. What do you want to be remembered for? That's all you. I said the only thing you can take with you and leave behind is your legacy. That's it. You can take it, you leave it, and you make a difference. So it's been a ride.
Which is a perfect transition, because I was just about to ask Dan that question. You're still young, so I don't want this to be sort of a big picture legacy question. However, as former vice president of 3 of the 4 parks here, what do you feel like is sort of the stamp that you put on any one of those 3 parks? What do you feel like is your legacy here at Walt Disney World? What do you think people remember you for?
Yeah, when I come on property, I run into people I've worked with. And after you've worked here for 26 years, you end up in 19 different jobs, you end up knowing a lot of people. And for me, that is it. Buildings, things get remodeled, buildings get knocked down, new things are built. But the people that I got to interact with, the managers, the employees, my bosses who contributed to my career, that's where I'm hoping, and I think we all have that. We look back on our lives and we say, who are some of the key people who sent us off in the right direction, or opened the door to something we didn't see before, or introduced us to a new piece of knowledge or an opportunity we had no idea existed. And when I was here, you think a lot about executing the plan every day. There's a lot of pressure. You got to make it happen, and there's high expectations. But when that's all said and done, you've kind of gone through war with people, and for people to come back and tell you stories about a time you were there for them and you helped them. And a lot of times you don't even remember those moments, but that's the way, if you're wired as a leader, you're there to help people along the way, because that comes back, and hopefully they'll learn how to do that for build their legacy on what you did. And that's what parenting is. Parenting is break the chain. Hopefully our kids were raised even better than I was, and they're going to learn from what we did with them, and that's going to cascade down. And that's the beautiful thing about different generations. You create these stories, you create these memories along the way.
Do you remind him that you're raising your kids better than you were raised?
Just because you said that doesn't make it true. I'll deal with this later.
Well, it's funny because growing up here, our kids grew up 2 miles down the street from my parents, and so they've known them like a second set of parents. And our daughter, our kids would call them sometimes. And I remember one call our daughter made is, she said, "Pappy, can you come pick me up?" And he said, "Well, why? What's going on?" And she said, "Well, my mom and Papa," she called us, "are being mean to me." She said, "What do they do?" He said, "They're making me eat all my dinner." I think he actually came over and rescued her. He was like, "Oh, we'll take care of you."
They like me better than their parents.
But it was a great outlet for them to have, because that doesn't happen in the U.S. today, especially Orlando. People don't have families here to be able to connect like that. And I just think we were so lucky to be near my parents and have our kids be able to know them so well and have that relationship with them. And they text each other. I think they talk to my kids more than my wife and I do. So.
Well, in fact, what was good, I worked at Disney because I could help them develop a story to tell their parents of how to get out of trouble. I said, "Now here's what you said. Your dad did it. He'll remember that."
So
Actually, Julian was one night, he came home late. He was supposed to be home at 1 o'clock and he didn't show up. And finally 3 or 4 o'clock he showed up at our house to sleep. He was 16 or 17, prom night. And his dad was picking him up 2 hours to go to soccer in Tampa. And I said, "Okay, Tristan, Julian, here's what you tell him. You were with a beautiful woman and you lost track of time. This is a very good excuse." Got out of it. So.
and he's just now finding out what really.
We don't know what really happened.
All right, so last question, then we're going to turn it over to the audience. So October 1st will be 50 years for Walt Disney World, and both of you had an extensive and impactful career here. What will that anniversary mean for you? Because obviously, this resort, which is our nation's largest single-site employer, It is the world's most popular vacation destination. It's had a significant impact on your life and your career. Lee, what will that birthday, what will that anniversary mean to you? And then Dan, same question. Lee?
Yeah, well, I mean, for Disney, it's pretty emotional. It changed our whole family life. Everything changed when I, actually Disney. Daniel worked for Disney before I did. In fact, he was here training. I was working at Marriott, and he called me and said, Dad, I got bad news for you. Disney's better than Marriott. I said, what? And he said, the training and how he was being treated. And I mean, it was a pivotal change in our life. I mean, I wouldn't be doing anything I'm doing today, writing a book. I mean, it was amazing, man. The one things I learned at Disney is, and it helps me think about things in my whole life, is everything matters here. Attention to detail. Cleanliness, it's never clean enough, it's never friendly enough, it's never, I mean, it's always hot enough. But it's that attention to detail. Now, Marriott was good, but I mean, the detail here is like mind-boggling. A lot of it you don't even see because you don't realize what the Imagineers, everybody went through. The training is amazing here. As we said, we don't practice on our guests. We make sure people are ready. And I really learned that lesson, that the key to a culture is to hire the right people, train them, and treat them right. And that's just an easy lesson for businesses out there that aren't doing it. People ask me, they'll call me and say, can you tell us the secrets of Disney? And I say, sure, if you pay me. I said, hire them right, train them right, treat them right. And I get my check and I go, you know, it's kind of like that. But it's true. There's no secret here. It's high quality people that are well trained and know what they're doing, and they get treated well and they take care of business. I can tell you, 9/11, I was here. I'm the one that had to make the calls that morning, and I was the first person to ever close Disney World. Hurricane Floyd. I was out of town. I was sweating. Well, I have a job tomorrow, and of course the hurricane turned and went to Charleston. But it's a lot of responsibility here, which I learned. People, there's 75, 80,000, 90,000 people on the property at that time. We had to evacuate them in an hour and a half. And everybody knew what to do here. That's what I learned. Everybody knew what to do. That day went perfect. Nobody got nervous, ran away. Everybody stayed, did their job, pulled it off. I just sat back and watched because we had such great people who knew what to do. They were trained. And so it's a big lesson to work here about the possibilities, how you can be better in your own life if you expect more. Disney has extremely high expectations, and that's the difference. You expect more, you get more. I said if you raise your expectations, the magic will follow, and it's so true. And I didn't really know that until I came to Disney and saw it. You can read about it until you've been here right in the middle of it. I mean, it's a whole new world, actually, a whole different world. You know?
And for you, Dan?
Yeah, you know, I started here, so I'll get in trouble if I don't mention this. The person that started at the very, very beginning before at Disney was my wife, Valerie. So she was here 3 years before either of us started working here. And that kicked off the whole, and every member of our families worked here at one point or another doing something. So we all have, as we said, everyone has a name tag in the family. But thinking back, you know, I started here in '91, that was the 20th anniversary. That's the 50th anniversary. And that can't be true.
Your math's good.
That can't be right though. The math, something's flawed in the math because it can't be 50. I can't be here and be that old. But things have flown by. But in looking back is the great thing about this place. And I had that moment. We were in France this summer visiting Valerie's family, and I took her niece's daughter. So we have grandnieces now. Maylene, she's 6 years old, and she is an incredible little girl. And I asked her parents, I said, could I take her to Disneyland Paris for the day for her birthday? So we got on the TGV in Lyon, we took it up, and 2 hours later we're at Disneyland Paris, and we spent the day there. And this little 6-year-old girl, she went 12 hours straight, no nap, just like, and she decided what we're doing that day. We had no map. I said, what do you want to do? And we must have backtracked 10 times. I'm like, this is the most inefficient trip I've ever taken to Disney, because we're just walking. I'm like, it was her day. Where are we eating? What are we gonna have? And she finally passed out on the train when we got back to go, and I had her back at 9 that night. But just watching her, and just for her, just everything was bigger than life. And this is a place where, you know, no one owns this place. We come in and out. You know, the day on May 19th, 2018, I kind of joked. I went out and got the Orlando Sentinel. I'm like, well, let's see what happened now that I've left. I'm like, there's no headline. Magic Kingdom opened. Apparently everything's okay. That's too bad. I thought I was really important there. But we're stewards of this place. And people pass in and out. And you have your time there to make it better. And when you look at, from our perspective, the experiences you're creating for these families and for people, and people have, they expect that. They expect when I come there, I mean, how many places do you go? And people say, I'm going there to create memories that I'm going to talk about to my grandchildren about. It's like, man, that's a lot of pressure. And so when you work here, you really feel that weight of responsibility. And you come in and you steward everything as best you can, and then you move on with your life, and the property keeps going. And the new generation comes in to continue to create these memories for these families. So it's, we are extremely proud to have been associated with Disney.
Well, let's turn it over to these guys. I know you've got questions. These folks, like they said, they're just stewards. So let's talk to the stewards and find out what you want to know. And by the way, we've got microphones set out throughout the room, so get to the one closest to you and fire away.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've followed both of you fairly closely, and what I'm interested in is the father-son dynamic. And for some perspective, my wife and I have two wonderful boys, and they're both working permanent jobs professionally now. And my question is, how do you know sort of when to push the buttons from a parent's perspective, and you know when did they maybe go too far from a kid perspective? And do you have any sort of anecdotal stories or comments to kind of balance that? Especially, you know, I consider you guys high-achieving people, and I would like to think of our kids as being high-achieving. In fact, one of them sort of followed in my footsteps career-wise. So that's my question. Any sort of wisdom about when to push the buttons, when you've gone too far, and how you handle that,
Yeah.
you know, over the years.
You'll do both. You'll go too far. I think I'll tell you one story. When Daniel was 16, we left him home alone. We went out of town, home alone, and we came back. And I came back first. I was coming back from LA on the red eye, and I walked into our house at 8 o'clock in the morning, and Daniel was standing there, a teenager, 16 years old, fully dressed on Saturday morning. Now, what's wrong with that story? Something wrong here. And I looked at him and said, Dad, what time did you get home? And I said, take the 10-second rule. We have a 10-second rule in our family that you can take 10 seconds to decide which story you're going to tell us. And I said, if you tell me the truth, you're going to have a bad day. If you tell me a lie, you're going to have a bad year. And he said, I drank beer, didn't want to drive. Now you got to stop because, now I got to rethink this. I said, all right, you can go to bed, that's over. You made the right decision. Because he had already read my yearbook where we wrote in there the big keg of beer we had at the Big Chief Motel, drinking, crazy. So if you have a yearbook, first burn it before you and we've always had that, is trying to make sure we're teaching the right lesson. And I asked Daniel, even when he was young, they had children, I said, do you mind if your mother and I help you raise your children? Because we're going to see it from different perspectives. You're busy, you're going, and we've always had that kind of relationship. And so, I mean, it's just a matter of it's like when you have to have those hard discussions, you hate it, but it's for their own good. If you got to have them, you got to do it with finesse. And, you just got to, if you're always thinking about them, you'll make the right decisions. And tell them, I'm sorry I'm having this. Because the only thing parents worry about are two things, safety and education. That's it. Safety and education. And you ask any mother for sure. And that's our job. And sometimes they're hard conversations. We had a hard conversation with Daniel's grade card, report card in 12th grade. Because he was screwing around last semester and trying to get into colleges. By the end of that night, I was crying, he was crying, and Priscilla was mad at me. I mean, sometimes it's emotional, but he remembers those times. And you got to do both. Because if you're doing it out of love, you're doing it right. And if you do it at work with people, you're doing it out of respect for them. You want them to be better. And yeah, I told people today, earlier, if you can't make hard decisions, have hard discussions, and go through the pain, don't have kids. And don't be a leader, because
Very
that's
good,
all
Terry.
you do. So, yeah.
So I got two quick concepts, because that's right on. One is a concept we talk about often is the difference between problems and dilemmas. Problems can be solved. 1 + 1 is 2. We like to think everything in life is that easy. And usually the really important things we have to deal with in our professional lives and our personal lives are dilemmas. There is no right answer. If there was, life would be much different. And raising kids is, or being a kid or being a parent is a dilemma. You do the best you can every day, and you make the best decisions you can. You learn from those, and you do it a little better next time around. I think that's one, is take the pressure off yourself to think you're supposed to do it some certain way. There is no certain way. There's just the best way you can do it. The second thing is, and I'll just say, I mentioned before when I said, I was going to go play rugby, he said, well, I have another idea. That was a choice. It was still a choice. He said, I think you should do this. I think it's going to be great for your career. I think, after that 18 months working, if you want to go to New Zealand, we'll sponsor you, and you can go do that, which someday I'll get down there. I'm definitely not playing rugby now. But I think teeing up choices is a great way that I saw happen for me. And Valerie and I just went through that with our son. He was working at Disney the past year. He took a year off from college. He was working here. And we said, all right, we're coming up to September. We said, we didn't say you got to go back to college, you have to keep working. We said, you have to decide what you're going to do moving forward. And if you decide to keep working, that's fine. We just have to know what that plan is and figure to help you do that. If you decide to go to college, then we want to help you and make sure you get there. So we were still pushing him, but it was his choice. We didn't tell him what we thought he should do. We just laid it out for him, gave him all the options, educated him. And because he couldn't really make a bad option. He's only 20. So let's say he works another year. Who cares? Then he goes back to school next year. I mean, I think we make a big deal, and we have this vision in our brains as parents, what our kids should do. I think they should be happy and do the best they can. And there's lots of places they can do that. So I would continue to just I wouldn't tell your kids what to do. I'd tell them options, and then tell them to talk to lots of people. And they'll eventually, hopefully, go down a path where they're going to make a decision you're on board with also.
And by the way, his son worked at a pavilion in Epcot. Can you guess which one? There you go. All right, next question.
That's funny.
What's your favorite customer service advice for business owners?
Favorite customer service advice for business owners?
Customer service advice?
Yep.
Hire them right, train them right, treat them right.
All right.
When you make a mistake,
Hold on,
Get that
hold on.
tattooed.
when you make a mistake, fire them. And do it quick. But expectations, you've got to sit down and make sure you understand the 10, 12, 14, 20, I don't know. Whatever they need to understand before you hire them, what they're getting into. And you sit down and you look them in the eye and you say, you might have to work on weekends, Christmas, Easter, do you understand? And you that, and then they can make that choice. But you got to be clear. You got to be clear. And clarity is a wonderful thing. And so a lot of them, 20-25% of the people that apply at Disney after we're there explain with clarity what is expected here, decide not to work here. They leave. They don't even fill out an application. And I can tell you, with teenagers, clarity is important. With kids, clarity is important. And you just gotta, excellence is a state of mind. If you want it, you'll get it. If you don't, is it hard? It's very hard. Mr. Marriott told me once, if you have flies in your restaurant, you like flies. Well, get rid of them. Kill them. And a lot of restaurants have flies. A lot of restaurants are dirty. A lot of people have rude cast members and employees. And that is not the employee's fault. That is the general manager's fault. Period. Don't look for the guy cleaning the bathroom. Look for the person in charge of that business. If you got rude children, that would be your fault, not your neighbors. And we gotta. That's where I go. You go get what you want. Will it be hard? Yeah. You may have to be out short of 3 people next week because you can't find the right people. You got to keep looking till you get them. If you don't get the right people, you're already in trouble. I mean, that's the absolute most important thing you do is who you bring into your company. I mean, nothing more important than, you know that, productivity, attitude, being friendly, I mean, it's, and I guarantee you, right now in this room, there are people, I hope you're writing down the names of the people in your company right now that you need to go back and deal with. Because you know who they are, and you've been putting it off for ages. And you and your husband have been talking about it. Now you gotta deal with it.
All right, next.
Hi, it's great to see everyone again. I do want to say that your legacy, I promise you, is alive and well at Walt Disney World. So thank you very much again for everything you've done for us. I do want to ask though, when you did make that decision to leave Disney, I mean, as you kind of touched on it, was it truly a leap of faith, or did you truly kind of plan for it?
Great question. It was I call it a calculated risk. So 2 kids were out finishing up college and now are gainfully employed. One, as a comedian says, we got 2 great kids and 1 other kid. So, and one was going to be graduating high school the next year. So we knew, okay, kids-wise, whatever we're going to do is not going to really impact them. We're not going to disrupt their life, their high school life, their everything. We did some math, and I told Valerie, I said, all right, well, if we don't make a dime for a year and a half, we don't have to change anything. And we're like, I think we're going to make a dime in a year and a half. And she said, okay. And the last thing was, usually I'm sort of the optimist, everything's going to work out, let's just go for it. And she's usually, let's make a list and really think about this. In this case, I was saying, let's make a list. She's saying, look, everything will be fine. I'm like, there's something wrong here. We're in these reverse roles. And she said, look, Dan, go do this. If it doesn't work out, you can always go get a job. And I said, wow, if you're this cool about it, then so am I. And that's what we did. But we certainly, when people say, go quit your job and live your dreams. Well, it's nice to say that, but you need to think about that. What's the worst case scenario? And who else is it going to impact? And what if things don't work out? Do I have another plan? I can do something else. And once you've done all that, then you take the leap, knowing that, okay, I'm in the best place I can be. I'm hoping for the best, but I plan for the worst. And now let's see where it goes.
So your wife, you met her at the laundromat, right?
Yep.
She thought everything would come out in the wash.